Well, New Mexico has made a head coaching position change prior to the 2024 season. Head coach Danny Gonzalez was fired, and they bring in Bronco Mendenhall. He kind of takes over. He came from UVA. Before that, he was at BYU for a really long time. He's always seemed to kind of be successful wherever he goes. But what can you tell us about Coach Mendenhall and what he brings to the table for the Lobos on and off the field?
I was shocked that they got Bronco Mendenhall. I thought Danny Gonzalez was a fantastic hire in 2020. He was hired in December of 2019. So they were the only team in the entire country that did not play a home game during the COVID season. They were shipped to Vegas, and they worked out in a ballroom and played their home games at Sam Boyd. So Danny Gonzalez was handed a bad card from the get-go. What I know about Bronco Mendenhall, and I like Coach Gonzalez. He's special teams at U of A under Brett Brennan. I wish him the best of luck there. We're hoping to have him on before that UNM U of A game. But what I know about Bronco Mendenhall is, if you guys know who Rocky Long is, he's a disciple. It is the old Mike Tyson. Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth. This team, I don't know what, and we'll get into that. I don't know what this team is going to be in 2024. But Bronco Mendenhall brings a lot of experience. The overall theme is finding this team's identity and what the culture is going to be moving forward. I think Bronco Mendenhall brings a lot of, I know that Bronco Mendenhall brings a lot of discipline, brings a high football IQ, even though I really hate saying stuff like that. He's very knowledgeable. I mean, 16 or 17 bowl games out of his entire coaching career. I think 1 year he didn't go, which would have been his first year at UVA, I think, going 2-10. But he's been here. He was a defensive coordinator in the late 90s under Rocky Long. He knows the area. I think he brings a little bit of expertise. He's kind of an outdoorsy guy. Albuquerque is a much bigger city, and Santa Fe, the metropolitan area, is much bigger than I think people realize. But there's still a lot to do outdoorsy here. He was in Montana before Mountain West Conference football media days. I guess, breaking in horses, or I'm not New York City. I don't know what you're doing there, but he was doing something with cattle or horses. So that's the kind of guy he is. I think he's hard work and that kind of cliche that always a lunch pail kind of guy, I think that's what he brings. What he is going to bring on and off the field is discipline. I know I mentioned that talking to you guys prior to hitting record. UNM was first or second last year in penalties. I can't remember. They were up there with Colorado. So that's going to change. Hard work. We've talked to several players. I've talked to several players the last 2 weeks that they will be the hardest working team, not only in the Mountain West, but in the country. They are going to outwork you. They think there's a sense of feeling that they're probably not going to win every game. Obviously, you're going to go into every game thinking you're going to win. But I think that they are taking themselves pride in hard work and doing the right things and trying to be not only with the off the field answer. And Bronco mentioned it at with media availability after his first practice was, it's just not about football. It's about preparing. I make fun of these cliche things, but maybe I wish I had it in my life earlier, but preparing these men, to embark on the world, whether it be in a football career where you're going and coaching, or you're just out in the real world, selling insurance, getting married, having 2-3 kids. That's what Bronco, I think Mendenhall is bringing. But there has to be a vast culture change at UNM if they want to get this thing jump started again.
Well, with the new head coach, it usually means new coordinators. The Lobos are no different in that regard. Coach Mendenhall appoints Jason Beck as his new offensive coordinator and QB coach. He was previously the OC at Syracuse. Do you know if Mendenhall or Beck's going to be calling plays here in 2024? And can you describe the kind of offense that you think you're going to see here in 2024?
So to make very quick to your listeners, the media, we don't have much access to the practices. It's practices about an hour and a half, out of 45 minutes. And you're, you're essentially asked to leave. And if there's interviews, you have to come back after practice. I've never dealt with anything like that at UNM. It's a little bit bonkers to me, but he's the head coach. It is what it is. My understanding, I think, of what I've heard is that Jason Beck will be calling the plays. I think Bronco Mendenhall is more of a defensive kind of guy. That would be his focus. Again, that could change just from everything I've heard. The offense they're running is trying to get the ball out of Devin Dampier's hand as quick as possible. So it could be, I guess, pro style spread, go, run and shoot. I don't know. The offensive line has a lot of overhaul. It was a very good unit last year. This team has 65 new players. During spring practice, they only had 65 kids in pads. So you're looking at an overhaul of culture. I don't know, and maybe Bronco Mendenhall knows it. This year might be a mulligan to get this ship turned around. Devin Dampier is a special player, though. I would think it would feature him, Andrew Henry. There are some talent at wide receivers. Caleb Medford. They got a new kid, Sean Miller. He transferred. Luke Weissong is a speedster. There is some talent there. It's just, can the offensive line protect them?
Well, let's start talking about some of that talent, and it kind of starts where it all starts on offense is that quarterback. And last year's starter Dylan Hopkins has graduated, leaving the aforementioned Devin Dampier to take over. Last season, Dampier came on quite a few times on in relief and playing for injured Hopkins, like in the Wyoming game, nearly led them to a comeback in that game. We saw some of those highlights in the introduction video. And I know Luke and I are both really excited about Dampier and what maybe his future holds there for New Mexico. But what can you tell us about Dampier and what you've been able to see him thus far, how he's looked?
Well, he's a sophomore, and I forgot that he came in during that Wyoming game, but I was at his first career start, which was, out of all places. Now, when you're thinking Mountain West Conference football, you're thinking, where's the big bad place to go? And it's Boise State, and it's Albertson Stadium. Dylan Hopkins didn't make the trip. He had flu-like symptoms. So we found out right before the game that he got the start. Poised, calm, cool, collected. He led the Lobos down the field on the first drive. I think they scored or they kicked a field goal. I mean, he looked like he had been playing college. He looked like a veteran. He's very smart. I know that. He's a pleasure to talk to. That Phil General mentality, he has that. He's a natural born leader. You've got Andrew Henry, somebody that's a senior. Listen to this guy. Caleb Medford has been around. I mentioned the guys he's working with. They listen to him, and they know what kind of special talent he is. And I think the team will probably go as he goes. He's athletic, he's agile, he can throw the ball, and he can run. So, Dylan Hopkins, that you brought up his name, he was probably the best quarterback that UNM had since Donovan Portery, which you're going back 16, 17 years. And there were times where he looked really flashy. Brian Vincent was the offensive coordinator. He's now at the University of Louisiana Monroe. But they did some, he and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, the running back, who was an honorable mention All-American. He had some weapons around him, so that for the first time in a long time, you had a quarterback that looked like a quarterback. And Devin Dampier kind of fits that bill. I don't know. I'm going to probably be incorrect in this comparison. I think I've heard Vince Young. I don't think he's as tall as Vince Young, But that, like the accolades and the skill set, I think is what probably the first thing that comes to my mind. I could be way off on that, and I could have somebody who's knows the X's and O's of football more than I that says that's probably not the case. But they look up to him, man, and I'm going to say it again. He's a sophomore, but he brings a whole new dynamic to that position that they have not had in years. And even during Mike Loxley's era, they had some playmakers at quarterback. It was just never utilized properly, maybe coaching. But he's a special kid, and I hope he can stay here, with NIL. That might change, but I'm looking forward to watching him, and I hope they can keep this team can keep him upright.
Let's move over to the running game. They take that big hit with Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt heading off to Arizona. He was their workhorse back in 2023. Andrew Henry returns from, the 2023 squad, and they add 3 transfers, 2 in the winter, 1 post-spring. What should we expect out of this running back room here in 2024?
Well, they have to replace Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt. We mentioned that. They had quite a running back room last year with Andrew Henry. Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt's nickname was Bill from the Bill Cosby show, Little Bill, because apparently he looked like him. So they called him Bill. And Andrew Henry put $1 in his pads. So it was Dollar Bill, was the better than thunder and lightning. So I appreciated it. And Andrew Henry's a pleasure to talk to. We recently interviewed him, and he was great. Talking about how he can score. I probably have the soundbite on my mixer. I don't know if you guys can hear.
Sweep, quick screen, inside zone, outside zone counter. You give me the ball, I'm gonna score.
I just love that. I hope you guys could hear that. But he was like, "Give me the ball, I'm going to score." So really, like my buddy Rick, who joins the show, was like, "I love that guy." Andrew Henry has shown a lot of confidence. I think he is definitely the number one. And again, you're dealing with, I don't want to say I don't know. But that's the way Bronco Mendenhall, the way that this hurricane is forming in preseason or fall camp, because I don't think he wants anybody to know. But I think Andrew Henry brings a lot of veteran leadership. He's been there. He's done that. I forgot where he transferred from prior to
I think UL Monroe.
It was a UL that it was Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt was North Alabama, and talk about a diamond in the rough. Holy, he's probably a draft pick next year. But yeah, ULM. He's been there and done that, and this is his. As we talk to him, this is his lineage, where, of course, he wants to go out a winner, but he was also kind of talking about like it starts with me, and it starts with Bronco Mendenhall in rejuvenating this program. UNM has kind of been known for their running backs, at least in my lifetime. I was telling you guys, Dontrell Moore, and when Bob Davie was here, they had a 3 running back attack: Casey Carrier, Daryl Chestnut. I don't know. They had like 3 or 4. Lamar Jordan was the quarterback, who's related to DeAndre Jordan. I mean, he was a phenomenal athlete. So, again, what can we expect out of this? I think this running back group, they have a transfer from Iowa State, Eli Sanders, Javen Jacobs, who played with Donovan Dampier. Hopefully they'll probably get a lot of, they're getting a lot of reps in practice. Again, with that viewing window, what I've heard is that's what they've been doing. But it's always kind of been a running back by committee. I think Andrew Henry will get a grunt of the rushes. I hope Devin Dampier is not running for his life, but I think that what you will see, don't know who it's going to be. I think you're going to see a lot of these guys in the running back room probably see action, and to figure out who they've got and what they've got, especially if these guys have eligibility left, with Andrew Henry being a senior.
All right, let's move over to the wide receiver room, and that room will look a little bit different than it did a year ago. But they bring back their leading receiver in terms of yards, Caleb Medford. They return Ryan Davis, Luke Weissong. They do lose Jeremiah Hickson, DJ Washington, Andrew Erickson, and Deuce Jones. The guys gone accounted for just shy of 1,300 yards and about 45% of the receptions in 2023. How did that wide receiver room look so far, and is anyone standing out to you?
Caleb Medford always stands out to me. These are two guys that I've recently talked to, so I've got a little bit more of an input with them with what I haven't seen at UNM's practice, that they're running this joke into the ground, protecting the plans for the Death Star, or getting ready for Georgia in the national championship game. I don't know. There's a level of paranoia that I've heard with Bronco Mendenhall, but I don't know. Can you blame him? He's got a job to do. Caleb Medford is a big dude. I like him a lot. He's got the experience. He showed, I think, him making one of those receptions. He had a really good Wyoming game. I have heard that him and Dampier have had a lot of reps post-practice. They work their route running after practice. I think Luke Wysong is occasionally there. I'm very excited for Luke Wysong. The Wysong family is a Lobo football lineage. The uncle, his dad played here. Very, very talented, I think track athlete. And I think he did that. But again, speedster, he returned a punt against Maine 2 years ago. I mean, you put him in space and he is very dangerous. And I think, as I was telling you guys before we hit record, this might be their most talented room. I'm sure if I said that in front of Andrew Henry's face, he'd probably punch my face. But I think that between Luke Wysong, I've heard good things out of Sean Miller. Again, you're coming from Illinois. I think these two guys are probably going to be the biggest factor if they can stay healthy. Luke Wysong is coming off an injury. He missed a majority of last season. I don't think just obviously his family, but I think Lobo fan, being that he's an Albuquerque metro area guy, the history of his family playing at UNM, I think he's probably next to Devin Dampier, might be the face of the program as far as players go. I'd love to see him bounce back and have a great year. I think that would be huge. Again, he's somebody, if you get in space, things are going to happen. Again, I look at their schedule. If they're healthy down the stretch at Colorado State, you're playing. They don't play Nevada this year. I'm trying to think of their schedule. I know I don't know what we're going to expect out of New Mexico State. I see them making big plays in big time moments to rack up those wins and start jump starting this thing. But I think that Caleb Medford and Luke Wysong, don't know much about Sean Miller, don't know much about the other guys, but I know what Luke Wysong and Caleb Medford bring to the table. They've been there and done that. And I think that might be really an insurance blanket for Devin Dampier while he knows majority of what he's doing. And I think he's a leader. He might rely on those veteran guys. Medford's a senior and Luke Wysong is a redshirt junior. So I think that you have that leadership on the outside. That's a huge ordeal for him. But as far as I hope that answered the question, I think they're the most talented. And I think if they are capable of keeping Devin Dampier upright and this offense clicks, kind of like it did last year, they could potentially be a very, very exciting wide receiver group.
Well, based on the Death Star and the clamps that they have on those plans to get in, what have you been able to hear and could describe for us of how you expect the tight ends to be utilized in this Beck offense?
With the plans for invading Normandy, they've got fake tanks in the north part of England. Anyway, I've heard very good things about Trace Bruckler. I think he's a sophomore. He's a big dude. They have, oh my goodness. And I know this is such bad live internet. Where is he? This has nothing to do with talent or what might be on the field, but they have a redshirt senior from Zurich, Switzerland. He's got the most badass name ever. It's Magnus Gears. I just absolutely love that name. I have heard good things about Trace Bruckler. I think he's a big dude. He's got some quickness. He's got some good hands. Again, if Dampier can find the rhythm with these guys, I mean, really, I'm glass half empty kind of guy. Really, I would say look out, because I think it might catch a lot of people off guard who watch Mountain West Conference football, who watch a lot of college football, smaller schools, and obviously I'm on the show talking. I think it could be really, really electrifying. I really do, and it's been a long time since I've said that. That's the kind of talent that Devin Dampier brings, and you guys were mentioning him, and then that's what you know. But I think Trace Bruckler would be the guy to look out for. I think he can block. So you've got a big, I think somebody told me that he looked like Gronk. So, I mean, I know that's an easy comparison to make, but if he's anything like Yosoi Fiesta, he could probably be pretty reliable offensive weapon on that team. But again, I'm not trying to say I don't know. There is, to give your listeners just a perspective of what the clamps have been here at UNM football, is Bronco doesn't want a distraction. Of course, I was a former reporter who covered the team. I don't consider it a distraction. It's my job. There is a lot of uncertainty. And as I've mentioned, this team is something that could probably go 0-12 or 7-5. There is talent, and with Dampier and those wide receivers, I know I'm repeating myself, I think that could be a lot of keys to their success. But I've never been a part of where practices are viewed for the media for like the first 20 minutes, then you have to leave. You can't watch, you can't film, you can't do anything. And then you can come back and interview the players. I might scoff at it as a talking head in Albuquerque, but if you want a winner, and we cover the University of New Mexico and we are a business, winning cures all. So from a reporting aspect and that journalist aspect that I still think with, I think it's a detriment to trying to get fans into the stands. And you showed that opening video. When I was in college and in high school during the Rocky Long days, it's not a big stadium. At most, they used to fit 44,000 in there, or a little bit more. New Mexico State had like 20,000 fans for the New Mexico Bowl, maybe more, when they played Fresno, and Fresno wants nothing to do, I think, with the New Mexico Bowl. I could be wrong. And that's not a knock on my friend Jeff Symbieta, who's the executive director of that bowl game. But for me to try to get fans in the stands, I think more could be being done. And I'll say that. And that's a very, very G-rated version, since I'm on your guys' show. But it's weird, because there's things that I do know about this football team, and then there's things that I absolutely don't know. And I almost want to throw up saying that as somebody who studied journalism. It's impossible. And, again, with the distractions, the day and age we live in, even when I was in college 15, 16 years ago, there wasn't that level, I think, of distraction, for as cliche as it sounds, online. But, we had a quarterback from the rival school in the state go viral for taking a leak on the practice squad here. So whatever, it all goes on the internet.
So let's kind of get to the position where I think, we talked a little bit earlier before we started recording. It's probably the biggest key to success for this football team here in 2024, and that's the offensive line. They lose their entire offensive line from a year ago. To highlight one guy returning, Isaiah Silimon's probably the guy that kind of highlights that room in terms of returning production. They bring in a ton of transfers as well. Tell us what we need to know about this offensive line here in 2024.
That's you and the rest of Albuquerque, the state of New Mexico, and the Mountain West Conference. What is this going to be? I think it's 17 new transfers. And I think this is maybe giving kudos to Bronco Mendenhall, because I don't know. You guys don't know. The opposing team doesn't know. However, I think that can also be probably a detriment to trying to plug holes. You've seen it crash and burn. I mean, look at Colorado last year. And I was super high on them after Nebraska. And that thing blew up. Both engines on both wings blew up immediately. And I didn't
A
place
lot of
another
smoke
bet
and
on them.
mirrors.
Yeah, a lot of smoke and mirrors. This will be the key, I think. And as I mentioned, didn't play the game, love watching the game, loving losing money on it, love the history of it in this country, college and professional. I don't know what they are doing, and with limited access to the media, I keep saying that the media has had to the program. Bronco Mendenhall is figuring out what to do. So it's gonna have to be. We will see first offensive play at 2:00 on August 24th at University Stadium in Albuquerque, New Mexico, because no one knows. Sean Ryder of the Albuquerque Journal, with what little he's had, might have a better idea. But to plug and play, I think 17 new offensive linemen, and hopefully they can build a core, and that some of those players will stick around to try to right the ship. But this was their strength last year. Look what they did for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, what they did for Andrew Henry. They protected Dylan Hopkins. It had been years since there were some flashy plays. They didn't beat Texas A&M, but they scored a touchdown. If you go back and watch the highlights of that game, that offensive line, and I've made all the jokes I can over UNM football for the last 15, 16 years since Mike Loxley took over the job. They parted the Red Sea. I mean, he had a hole the size of it, and he made NFL type moves to cut up the right sideline. And Dylan Hopkins had an arm. He made some deep throws that were great. They came in at times, you thought this offense was going to probably win them a few more games. Penalties, we're talking about last year, and penalties and poor defense did that last year. But the offensive line, for whatever musical chairs they figure out, it's going to be the key. And we're not going to know, at least as far as my knowledge, we will not know until they take the field against Montana State. By the way, did you guys know Montana State was favored in that game?
Doesn't shock me. I mean, I can't imagine it's a whole lot, but I mean, I guess if there's a positive, we're going to get a preview of what to expect in week 0, right? And not a lot of games that week, so we'll get to really kind of digest that new team there, new offense.
And I don't mean to interrupt you. They're 7.5-point dogs to Montana State.
Well,
I would have thought maybe like 5.
Right. I use Action Network, and the consensus on there was 7.5, and the first line came out at Mountain West Conference Football Media Days at 4.5, and then it shot up to 7.5, and I was like, and I have a buddy here he can tell you spot on with all of it. And he goes, when he heard 4.5, he goes, it's going to be higher. So they are 7.5. Again, week 0 on FS1, the home team. That's an FBS team with, if you follow the sport, who Bronco Mendenhall is, what he brings. They are 7.5-point underdogs to Montana State. And I'm slowly learning about Montana State. I like FCS. I know they are a good team. So I'm not shocked.
They're a good FCS team.
They're a really good team, yeah.
And given all the, like you said, the turnover, I mean, I guess it makes some sense for sure.
Well, Ryan, if you had to pick an offensive player to have a breakout type season in 2024, who are you picking?
I got to go with Luke Wysong. I know I've mentioned his name. I would love to see him do what he can do. Once again, I'm probably doing a disservice to Andrew Henry, because if I said that in front of him, he'd probably punch me in the face. But I think Luke Wysong, again, he can return punts. He can return kicks. You can use him, in space as a running back, and sweep, pitch, get the ball in his hand, get people in front of him. I think he's a very electrifying player. And I think that he is itching to get back on the field, being that injuries have slowed him down. I would love to see him and Devin Dampier do some big things. I think he is truly a big player. He's truly capable of being a big time player in games. And I think if he's going off, then you have to watch Caleb Medford. I think the two of them as a 1-2 punch could be very dangerous. But I'd have to choose Luke Weissong. I'd love to see him have a good year. You know, somebody compared him to a Julian Edelman. You know, compared him to a slot guy, Wes Welker, when he's not dropping passes against, you know, late in the fourth quarter there. But I would love to see him have that kind of year. I think it would be really good for a local kid with everything that this program has gone through, for him to have a really big bounce back year.
Well, if you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, please rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you for all your support. And until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.